I want to welcome Sivan Cohen Saban, CEO of the Institute, and Dovi Francis, founding partner at Group 11.
Hello. You know, I haven't seen an auditorium this full since my graduation from high school. And I graduated without a diploma. So it's, it's good to see when the choices, whether to discuss national security or eat a mediocre plate of food, is apparent in Israel. Well, thanks for having us, the 10 of you that have arrived. Okay, Sivan.
Someone? That's I know. Hello, everyone. It's a great honor to be here. You've met him already, but let's make it official. Welcome, Dovi Francis, a Group 11 venture capital investor, and according, Dovi, to recent reports, the prospective advisor for establishing the AI headquarters at the Prime Minister office. Dovi, first, can you give us, please, some words about yourself, about Group 11?
All right, who's, just know your audience. Let's do know your audience for a second. Just, hey, Neil, how's it going, Faked? See, high ranks here in the front row. That's good. It's already worth it. So, who's familiar with myself, Group 11? Who's Israeli? Raise your hands, just so we know who's Israeli. Okay. Keep your hands up, Israelis, just a second. And of those who are raising their hands, who's familiar with myself, Group 11, watched Shark Tanks, all this good stuff? Okay, so maybe I'll give you a brief. Now that we know the audience, my name is Dovi Francis. I'm the founding partner of Group 11. Group 11 is a venture capital firm that I established in 2012. We manage about $1.5 billion, including distributions made to investors. We invest predominantly in Israeli-related technology companies. So of our portfolio, where we have 16 very strong and centralized positions, 14 are Israeli-related companies. I left Israel about 18 years ago, moved to the States. I operate out of the States, so invest in Israeli companies, bring them into the US, and yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Okay. So we're here at the Defense Tech Summit. I see outside and here also participants from the Garage, Mafat, Libertad. Let's discuss what's currently considered the hottest sector, defense tech.
Yeah, so I haven't been in the earlier sessions yesterday and today. You know, I'm a rather versatile investor. So I built my career in financial technology. In recent years, the last 3 years, I started looking around me, just kind of like noticing the machine learning revolution, what we call today the AI revolution. And I started investing a little bit in cybersecurity, on the nexus of cybersecurity and AI, healthcare and AI, education and AI, fintech and AI, of course, and what have you. So I'm not a typical defense tech type of investor. What really interests me the most, where I feel like defense tech is a facet of, is national security technology and how to maintain Israel's dominant position in the region amidst the artificial intelligence revolution, and considering what our neighbors are currently working on doing and their national AI plans.
I know you have a lot of details about that. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's going on in the Middle East now from that perspective?
Yeah. So anyone here has ever transacted with Saudi Arabia or the UAE? Visited Saudi Arabia? Raise your hands if you visited Saudi Arabia. Okay, confidential, don't worry, the camera is not with your fake US passports. And you visited UAE recently? Okay, so way more people visited the UAE. So I think what's happening in those particular nations, and it's very interesting, you know, if you look at Saudi Arabia, we have 35 million people living in Saudi Arabia. They're more or less, okay? About 60% of them, their average age is in their 20s. which is crazy. And they generate together about $1.1 trillion, so 2 times our GDP. Their GDP per capita is $20,000. Our GDP per capita is around $65,000 as of last year. But if you drill a little bit deeper, before talking about their project to deploy $100 billion into artificial intelligence before 2030, if you look at Saudi Arabia and you kind of like start digging deeper, kind of like well beyond the grandiose plans to expand and become the AI nation of the MENA region, you find that only 40% of the households are connected to sewer. They don't have a centralized sewer system, believe it or not. You find that poverty, if you take the averages away, that poverty is incredibly high. You find that investments that go into their startup nation are totaling about $1 billion a year, and that's after significant improvement. By the way, ours, in a bad year, like this year, hover around $8.5 billion. Okay, the peak, which was 2021, were $24 billion a year. So, and they only have 6 unicorns. And we had, at the peak, 97 registered unicorns. Now, don't worry if it's a fake unicorn or a real unicorn, meaning that, you know, some unicorns that we know are not real in terms of their terminal value. But the numbers are the numbers, and the percentages are the percentages, right? So they're minuscule in comparison to us. They're minuscule in comparison to us. Their startup nation, when you compare it to ours with respect to money coming in, the caliber of the engineering team, which they don't disclose, by the way, you cannot find how many engineers they have, it pales in comparison to Israel. Their M&A activity pales in comparison to Israel. Investment activity pales in comparison to Israel. But where do they win? They have a national plan. They have a national plan, they have the money, and they're allocating the money aggressively, and they're pursuing startups aggressively to set up operations in Saudi Arabia. They're investing aggressively in funds. They're fostering relationships aggressively. They have a national plan. I'm not going to talk about UAE because we only got 15 minutes here on stage, but the situation in the UAE is actually better than that of Saudi Arabia. Like, they have 200,000 engineers, for example. I think they have 4 unicorns, but considering their size, 9 million residents, it's not a bad thing. But they are also incredibly ambitious. So the bottom line is those 2 nations are pushing tremendous amounts of capital into becoming AI nations and building the core infrastructures, data servers, supercomputers, tech ecosystem, foreign investments, and what have you. And we as a nation currently do not have a plan.
So we'll talk in a minute about the national AI program. But before that, please, I believe that the audience would be interested in hearing about the institute. Can you provide some details, what we can tell about the institute? We can say that the President of Israel, Mr. Yitzhak Herzog, is involved, people like Avi Gil and senior officials from the intelligence community whom we're not allowed, I'm sorry, to name.
Yeah, so when we say the institute, we don't mean the Mossad, okay? Just so it's clear here in the audience. You know, I'll make it quick. In November 30th, 2022, ChatGPT 3.5 came about. So that's kind of like when the revolution has officially begun, although the paper, Attention is All You Need, was written in 2017. And by the way, an Israeli guy was part of the people who wrote it, a fellow named Noam Shazir. ChatGPT also had an Israeli guy named Ilya Sutskever, who now started SSI. But besides the point. But in any event, November 30th, 2022, the revolution has begun. ChatGPT 3.5 was released to the public. January, I visited Israel. I met with one of my CTOs, Ilan Twig, the co-founder of a company called Navan, one of our unicorns, and he showed me some of the models he has built using ChatGPT on his computer after he bought a $35,000 GPU from NVIDIA. And my jaw, like, essentially dropped. I said, I can't believe it. We're literally seeing the future. And we spent considerable time together in the first days of January 2023, which were also the first days of the judicial reform and the shenanigans that have taken place and the disputes that have taken place around that. By the time I spent with him, playing with the model and seeing some of the things that he managed to achieve, and he's an incredibly talented technologist, brought me to the conclusion that if we don't prepare as a nation, we are doomed, essentially. We will cease to exist as the state of the Jewish people. I guess that the same realization dawned upon Shimon Peres when he set up the nuclear reactor, back in the days with the support of the French president. So with that in mind, I thought to myself, okay, it's impossible to currently speak with the government. There were riots and demonstrations. It's impossible to speak with some of the tech leaders here. And forget about who was right and who was wrong. The attention of people were not where it needs to be. And we can argue, when you think about the Illuminati or the powers that be, we can argue about why this thing happened when it happened. I have my thoughts. But the bottom line is that it happened and people were not focused on the goal. The goal is to make sure that from a national security perspective, we have our doomsday weapon, which means we have a supercomputer, we have the infrastructure related to be built around the supercomputer. And I said, you know what, I spoke with a few friends, the president of Israel, you, Sivan, who helped me kind of like lead that effort, Ben Gurion University, because we graduated from Ben Gurion and we needed some academia as part of that role, NVIDIA, Microsoft, the Office of the Prime Minister, Avigil, who's a great supporter, Yali, the General Accountant of Israel, and we built a local coalition. We built a local coalition when everybody else were busy fighting one another. And the idea that I had in mind was, let's try to replicate, as we're building that coalition, let's try to learn from one another. And there was a group of about 100 people that were involved in that, in the setup of that thing we call the Institute. And once we do, we have the framework around which we can build a national AI directorate with the Prime Minister, with the support of the acting government. Why? Because that's the acting government. Because that's what we have. And we don't know when another government will be chosen, but in this democratic state, and by the way, Saudi Arabia ain't, and the UAE ain't, in this democratic state, we need to work with acting officials in order to promote national goals. It is what it is. So that was an attempt to practice something that may end up being a governmental agency, and then we evolve to something else.
So that's exactly my next question. As we mentioned, Prime Minister Netanyahu intends to appoint you as his advisor for establishing Israel National AI Headquarters. Could you please talk about the need for National AI Headquarters?
Yeah. So
at the PM and not...
Yeah, so I cannot speak on behalf of the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister will decide who he wants to appoint as an advisor for the setup phase of the National AI Directorate. I can tell you that the National AI Directorate is currently sitting on the Prime Minister's, there is a vote that all ministers need to vote on to set this thing as a branch of the Prime Minister's office, which I think is what you typically do with the critical infrastructure. We've done it with the Mossad, we've done it with the Cyber Authority, and we'll do it with AI, God willing. It depends on the Prime Minister and the ministers. But there is a vote, and the vote will happen this month, and once the vote takes place, we go into the setup phase. The setup phase is 90 days to set up the NAID. It's a directorate, it's not headquarters. And at that point, the right people will be chosen, will be elected to run this thing full-time. And it's a serious branch. It's going to be significant. So that's good news. Why we're doing it and why I pushed to do it. Luckily for me, the door to the Prime Minister's office was open. In fact, the door to the Prime Minister's office and all government branches, I can tell you as a tech guy, okay, is open to all prominent tech people that have an idea, that want to promote an initiative and what have you. So if you put politics aside and you want to help the State of Israel at this pivotal time, the door is open, and if you feel like it's closed, come to me. But in any event, I met with the Prime Minister 2 months after meeting Ilan. At that time, we were already setting up the Institute, but I went to meet with the Prime Minister and present to him kind of like the picture as I see it, which was fairly grim at that time. He gave me some homework. We set up a team. The team has done some homework, got back to him. There were 6 meetings with the Prime Minister and his team, and the General Accountant and his team. They've been incredibly supportive. and the Minister of Treasury, who's been incredibly supportive. So we're the final strokes of setting this thing. I think it will be incredibly important to all facets of national security, including defense tech. And we're almost there. I will not talk about what happened in the conversations with the Prime Minister, though.
Do we have time for one question from the audience? Please, if anyone wants to ask something.
We have time, by the way, I don't know. Yeah, let's rock and roll. Questions?
Okay, so I'm going to ask you. There is a volunteer. Let's go.
Hello? No.
You want mine?
It's okay. Okay. You can speak and we'll translate. Yeah, it's empty anyway, so we can hear you. Yeah. Yep. Great question. So yesterday I went to Bet HaLochem and I met with I don't know how to say it in English, I'll say יושב ראש ארגון נכי צה"ל. It was an amazing meeting. They're doing such a great job. And yes, I can repeat the question. The question was, when you're speaking about AI and the applications of artificial intelligence, what about healthcare? And what about mental healthcare, in particular after, Haravot Barzel and October 7th devastating events? So I met yesterday with יושב ראש ארגון נכי צה"ל, got kind of like a very interesting and broad picture of what's happening in that realm. And we have lots of Cohen nefesh. We have lots of men, we have lots of people who are, suffering from Helm Krav, etc. And but I think what I'll do, I'll take healthcare as a vertical where artificial intelligence can make an impact, and I'll skin it down for a second. I'll say the following: look, today we have the Ministry of Health, we have hospitals, we have HMOs, what we say kupot cholim. We have startups in that realm, and we have research institutions like Weizmann. Okay, so that's the healthcare vertical. Within each one of those 5 components, none of the organizations is speaking with one another when it comes to AI research. Zero collaboration. So let's say that Clalit has Professor Ran Balitzer, who is an incredible guy, a brilliant guy, and he has built a beautiful AI program at Clalit. But they're not communicating with the other HMOs, and they're not communicating with the other hospitals, they're not communicating with the Ministry of Health, they're not communicating with startups, or not communicating with research centers like Weizmann. That's one vertical. We can play the defense vertical. I'm willing to bet that Mafat is not communicating with the Mossad, who's not communicating with the Shabak, who's not communicating with 81, who's not communicating with 8200 when it comes to innovation. I can talk about the education vertical. We just got the Matzov results. I don't know if you read the news. Our education system yields results that are similar to that of Jordan when it comes to mathematics. We fell in each one of those components. And I'm not saying it to criticize the acting government. It's not a political statement. It's a factual statement. And it's the result of negligence and the reliance of what we call MOACs of the startup nation. We should stop using this stupid name, Startup Nation. We are either AI nation or we're dead, and we can choose. So I think we need to kind of like set our compass on a new north, and that means to have a national program which will include mental health care as well as part of the healthcare vertical. But you have to start top down, you cannot talk bottom up.
Thank you very much, Dovi. Thank you for your time.